Bonjour tout le monde et les gars. I just wanted to come on here. Well, I didn't just want to come on here. I'm here today to tell you be confident, be direct. I've come on here to tell you about this great method that I will say I discovered because in a way I'm sort of teaching myself, but it's now that I come to think of it, it's kind of obvious. Basically, it's using Netflix and then using ChatGPT. And that's all, kind of. It's amazing with ChatGPT because you can, if you give it phrases, then you can take those phrases. Um, you can tell it to take all of the phrases that you've asked it about to translate from whatever language to whatever other language. For me, English to translate from French to English. Take all those French phrases and turn them into an Anki deck, a spreadsheet, and then you can use that spreadsheet to create a deck in Anki. You might not necessarily have audio connected, but if it's the great thing about using Netflix, and well, not necessarily Netflix, you can use anything, but I'll tell you why. For example, I used another method. Well, I tried to use another method of getting a VPN because on Netflix you can watch foreign language content without being in that country. Like I'm watching French TV series. There's some like that I can't watch because I'm not in France, but that's okay. There are others that I can watch. There is stuff on there that's French. So just pick you don't need to have a VPN. It's just one less thing it's expensive. You don't have to another thing you don't have to pay for. If you just get your streaming service subscription. But the thing is, you don't even need to use Netflix. You can also use YouTube. So if you know about this method where you go on YouTube and you search for things in the target language, the language that you want to learn, and then you just watch the content from that language, and you sort of train YouTube to only show you um, that that language's content, you can learn that way. But the great thing about YouTube now is that almost every video has uh, subtitles. And the subtitles aren't always great, especially if there's a bit of an accent. They're not perfect. But if you're, for example, watching, I watch these commentary videos. Like I just watched one about, she was talking about it was called The Curse, La Malédiction des Artistes qui percent sur TikTok. So the curse of artists who break through on TikTok, who go viral on TikTok. And since she was just talking directly to the camera, there wasn't like conversation and people talking over each other, the automatic subtitles were good enough. So there are, a plethora of websites you can find to grab the subtitles from the video. One that I found is transcriptly.org. I'll put a link for it down below if you want to go there. And it's free to use. There was another one, but it wasn't free to use. But this one is free to use, and it breaks up the subtitles. It even puts the video next to you, so you can have ChatGPT open. You have the video, and you also have the dialogue. So you can just because that's the thing is like just copy. You can just copy them, paste the dialogue. That's the thing with Netflix is you can't copy and paste the dialogue. But and this is where I got the idea from. Another YouTuber, he's Japanese, and he said he used it to learn English, and it's obviously really easy with a language that's uses a phonetic script. With Japanese, it might be a bit harder, but I believe there is a solution. So he's Japanese, and he used it to learn English. So I thought it can't. He only watched, I believe, he said he watched Friends, iCarly, and one other series, which doesn't really seem like a lot. Um, but when I remember when I was learning Japanese, when you're a beginner, you always get introduced to the language so slowly. But the thing is, your brain is very good at picking up patterns, but it just has to be able to hear the pattern. You know what I mean? So, you're never going to learn how to speak French if you're not hearing French around you. And with the subtitles in mind, the subtitles can help you pick up words. And I've honestly only been doing this for about maybe a month, 6 weeks, maybe a month. And my brain is starting to it's starting to hear when the word at first it was really like it was hard, it's a slog, and it will be really slow, it may even be boring, but there's something so satisfying about working out what the sentence means. So I was using this in connection with Anki, so I'd go through my 30 words or whatever every day, and then, well, not 30, I think I started on 30, but I went down to 20. But you don't have to do that. No, I'm only doing 10 now. That's right. I think I started on 20 and now I'm on 10. 10's enough. You might not even remember all of them, but that's also a thing. Um, you don't need to remember every single word that you're trying to learn because they'll come up again and again and again. At the beginning, you're in like the ocean. It's like you're at the ocean and it's like you're at the beach and someone said, and you're like, okay, I got to swim to the other side, and the other side is learning French, and so you got to swim. You just don't know where the other side is, but you just got to get in the ocean and start swimming. So, or let's say maybe it's a river, or I don't know, a lake that you've got to cross. You can't see the other side, but if you just start, you will get there. And that's the thing, is like you become, you see so many words just repeat and come up. And the thing is, if you just use something like Anki, because the way I wish I could give you some like clips from things I've been watching, but the way people use words like in a sentence, like for example, I noticed in French, um, okay, so how you say close to something, there's this scene in, what's it called? In 10%, it's Call Your Agent in English. Great show, by the way. I highly recommend it if you're learning French. And otherwise, it was still fun. I watched it all with English subtitles. I thought it was great. Call Your Agent. Anyway, um, uh, I think there's only about 10 episodes. It's pretty short. Um, so there's this scene where they're talking, and she asks like, "Oh, so where are you from?" Oh, and she's like, "Oh, I live on like the Azure. It's called the Azure Coast. I'm not sure where it is in France, but it's near Cannes. Well, Cannes we say, English speakers say, but Cannes, where the film festival takes, Cannes Film Festival. And so she says près de Cannes, and that's près. Près means close. De Cannes. Près de Cannes. So if you're a learner, you would say près de Cannes. Like j'habite à près de Cannes. So I live, or maybe it's just j'habite près de Cannes. Any French speakers, French learners, tell me, is it j'habite à près de Cannes or j'habite près de Cannes? Anyway, so she says près de Cannes. So she doesn't say près de Cannes. She says près de Cannes. So there's a lot of things like that which you can't learn, especially with in kind of Roman and European languages, where we have a lot of in Japanese they just drop what is kind of their prepositions, they're called, their equivalent of prepositions. What their equivalent of preposition is, they just completely get rid of them. Like, but for us, it's kind of like how you say to in English. I'm going to the shops, but then we say it, but it's like to. I'm going to the shops, to the shops. I'm going to the movies. I'm going to the shops. I'm going to the store. We get to, not to, right? Because to, if you say to, then it's like, it's too big, too small. But we have to make that distinction. But when we're actually pronouncing them, and that's sometimes the problem as well. Like if you're on like Forvo, if anyone doesn't know what Forvo is, it's a website where you can listen to clips of people pronouncing words is sometimes they overpronounce things. And if I was teaching someone English, I'd be like, "Oh, it's what's a word? It's incompatible. Incompatible." But then when I say incompatible, incompatible, it's like bleh, you just kind of because there's only one word that sounds like that. So, you know, we try to um rub things down, but that's basically what I noticed from that pred can is it's like oh pred. It's like they basically put them together, and there's a lot of things like that in French where they have like it's because these words that appear so often they kind of clip them to the front and back of like other words. It's almost like the word it's like a composite, you know. And that's one of the main things about learning languages is like there are when you as a beginner you'll learn like singular words and it's like oh bon means good or whatever but there's nuance to words and how they're used in a sentence, right? But that comes from what I've noticed there's like chunks, right? And the most important thing is to recognize these chunks because they always use the same kind of like chunks, obviously each or pattern, let's say each pattern repeat it's always there's lots of them in a language, obviously tons and tons and tons of them, but you just got to get exposure to them in hearing this pattern over and over again because there's no point in just translating a singular word. That is kind of my problem with these. If you're going to do this, watch Netflix, have the subtitles, and I found that on Netflix the subtitles are pretty close, although now I'm starting to notice that there's a lot of things they don't put in the subtitles, and sometimes they kind of distill it into a more simplified form for the subtitles. They don't write exactly what they're saying. Sometimes it's exactly what they say, and other times it's not. But won't know. I didn't notice that at first, obviously, because I couldn't speak. I'm not a native French speaker. I'm not sure if they do that in English, because when I notice that the subtitles are different, it puts me off when I watch like in English. But French people often will like throw in words like moi and like in the middle of a sentence and stuff. So perhaps it's more common for them to like just leave those like extra parts out. Anyway, I'm getting off track. If you're going to do this, don't. There's lots of add-ons you can get on Firefox or Chrome. They're like when I was doing my French class, I remember there was an add-on. It's got bilingual subtitles. Now for a non-language learner or like a first-time beginner, L2 language learner, their second language, the first one obviously being their native language, or is that L1? Someone correct me. Correct me in the comments. For someone learning their second language, like they wouldn't understand that the way you translate things is not one to one. So even though you're watching with bilingual subtitles, sometimes it can be like what they write in the subtitles because there's obviously cultural context. There's and you have to write it within the frame of what's happening. So it's like, how do I make the feelings conveyed properly? Is they can't translate it one to one because then it would just be confusing in some of the sentences. So they and sometimes that's a funny thing is you'll be watching and it'll say like one or two words, like one word in English, and then suddenly there's like a sentence in French and they go blah 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 blah. It's because the idea is conveyed either can't be conveyed or it's conveyed much, it's easier to convey that feeling or that sense in English than it is in French, and also the other way around as well. So no bilingual subtitles, because what I think is so important about, and like something like LingoPie, I'm not saying LingoPie is, I haven't even honestly tried it, but I did try some other add-ons for browsers, and the problem you'll find is the chunk part, is not being able to select chunks. You can select words, but a lot of a lot of language is these repeating patterns, these bits of the language where like pred can, you know what I mean? Like there's probably not many situations where près and de don't go together. That's why it's said like that, pred. Just as an example, you don't have to, it doesn't matter if you're not learning French, okay? Just whatever language you're learning. I'm trying to think of something in Japanese. Um, I don't know. I forget. Anyway, you can't, you couldn't highlight the chunks, So it's easier to just like, because sometimes you'll pick out a word and the translation, like let's say, for example, this is one I learned today, dommage. Dommage means damage, right? That's what I got from the dictionary. It means damage. But from watching this series, I learned that it kind of means, if you say dommage, it kind of means like that's too bad or what a pity, like we'd say in English. It doesn't, I guess it can mean damage, like its literal meaning. And like another word, la peine, which means two meanings. It can mean a sentence, like a criminal sentence, but it can also mean, it means like the pain, but it's used to mean like worthwhile, like something's worthwhile or it's not worth it. Kind of, there's no one-to-one translation in English, um, where it's just like the something, the worth or it's worth. No, because it's kind of doesn't make sense. Um, so you'll get things like that all the time, and it's like, well, I need to see the phrase, and that's where Reverso Context is great. That's another app we can suggest. I know I'm going to be off track, but let's just stick to Netflix and ChatGPT for now. So that's where ChatGPT will come in because you can give it the full sentence or just like whatever and you'll start to learn the more you watch it because it's about discovery and that whole kind of discovery process of like it's like you're digging through the language to try and understand. You've got to get yourself in the mind of like I'm a learner. I've got to discover it. I've got to find things, kind of like reaching out your feelers, mentally to try and get meaning and there'll be situations where they're pointing at something and they'll say something and it'll come up in the subtitles and you'll be like, oh, okay, that's obvious what that means because they're literally pointing at the thing and I saw it on screen. But a lot of the time it's, we speak in a sort of, not a literal way. So you'll get to recognize the chunks. It's normally a preposition and then a noun or sometimes there's multiple nouns in a row, but a few words kind of clump together and you give that to ChatGPT and then it's like, oh, this means this, and then if you still don't get it, you can give them the full sentence and they're like, okay. And then if you can also give them the scene, like you can say to ChatGPT, what's happening in this scene, what's happened before, and then this is what's been said. And that's amazing is it can break it down. It can give you a full description of what that actually means. So all of that to say, I wouldn't bother using these. You don't need, all of it's all about the discovery, and that's what will make learning fun. Like it's amazing all of these different tools. Like we have so many tools these days. It's like it's kind of like that kind of person. I saw on I think it was on YouTube Shorts. They were like it's a Chinese. They call it optimist. They were calling it an optimistic loser. It's a new kind of word for a person who they find out a new thing, they get really excited about it, and they buy all the gadgets and the toys and the everything they need, and then they just don't follow through. You don't need all the gadgets and all the toys and stuff. All you need is French language content Oh, that's what I was going to say before. Sorry, I got off track. All you need is French language content. I'll come back to that. All you need is French uh, language content in your target language, and then ChatGPT to help you sift through it to uncover it. And I mean, you can also look it up on the internet if you don't feel like, um, there's websites like High Native where people post questions. But if you're not, sometimes you won't be able to find it, or you won't. You'll have to wait if you're going to make an account and post the question. You have to wait for someone to respond, which is not bad. You can do that if you want, or Reddit, you know. But I don't really like. I feel like you get so much. It's such a mixed bag on Reddit, whereas on High Native, it's just like they straight up just give you the. People just seem. It's very pragmatic. They give you the answer. Anyway, so I tried using a VPN and I went to a French language site, um, like a France site where this TV show that I wanted to watch was being hosted, and but the subtitles were so different to what they were saying, and even I could like I wasn't very advanced in French, like I don't was kind of like just a beginner, but even I could tell that's not what they were saying. Like it was the same kind of meaning, obviously, like it's just they'd written, but they'd really condensed it, and I'm like, this isn't good enough because I need the elaboration. I need a to be able to like um I need the details. I want to see the whole thing. So that's why I'm suggesting Netflix, is because they seem on their subtitles they seem to be pretty like done. One add-on I would say is I'm not sure what this add-on is, but this is for like Chinese. This a specific example I saw was Chinese, but I'm sure certain for Japanese they have it as well. I'm a Korean. You just got to learn the alphabet because it's not that. I think Korean is not, the alphabet's like really simple. It's a phonetic alphabet, and the same thing for what's the Cyrillian, the Russian alphabet. It's the same thing. Like it's phonetic. Chinese is basically the only one. Chinese and Japanese are basically the only ones that aren't phonetic, and it's like a pictograph. And I would say Japanese is worse than Chinese because Japanese is they took the Chinese written language and basically applied it to their language, and so now it's like a whole big mess. And it kind of makes sense once you learn that. You're like, oh, it makes sense that Japanese is written this way. But basically, this add-on would put the this is for Chinese, but I'm sure there's a Japanese equivalent. An add-on, it would put it in the sidebar in pinyin, so written in like English characters. So that was one. So that's how you can copy that instead of like because you obviously can't as a beginner you can't read, but you could still listen. I mean, you don't have the text, but you could still listen. But it would be better if you obviously it's going to be a lot easier if you have the subtitles, because then you can be like, oh, that's that, and I think that's probably what makes it much easier for an adult to learn, is because we can already read, so you can like get up to speed like so quickly. You've already learnt one language, it's easy to learn another one. Anyway, um that's my guide on becoming proficient. I mean, I've only just started, but I'm making leaps and bounds. I'm already understanding things that they're saying, and I can hear where the words begin and end, and I can hear familiar words, and it's great. So give it a go. Netflix, ChatGPT. That's all you need.